Well, this wasn't headline news here in the United States today, but guess what? The situation in Ukraine is definitely deteriorating. So, the Prime Minister of Ukraine has resigned, which means that the entire government of Ukraine is null and void. In other words, Parliament is essentially dissolved. What you have is factions fighting amongst themselves. There is no longer a law and order of any kind. In fact, laws cannot be brought even to the table. And this was, of course, one of the points that the prime minister, said why he was stepping down, why he was resigning, because nothing could be done. Now, it should be understood here in the West that this current prime minister, it was also very closely aligned with Yulia Tymoshenko, who is essentially a right-wing hardliner, a super nationalist, a completely divisive figure in Ukrainian politics. And he was also closely aligned with the Svoboda Party. That was not his own party, but they formed the coalition. And now that coalition has broken down. Now, basically what happened during the coup in Ukraine is that right-wing nationalists and essentially some neo-fascist parties came into power after the ouster of Yanukovych. And so this coalition has now essentially broken down. And internally, I suppose, since the current prime minister was in favor of IMF measures in order to basically bring laws about that would cut all their ties with Russia, that would, and the parliament, no less, also decided before this resignation that all communists and all left-leaning parties should be excluded from parliament altogether. Now, I wouldn't exactly call this democratic, okay? So to make this situation what it is today is now, of course, there came a point where these IMF measures had to be imposed by law on the Ukrainian people. That means the cheap gas or gas subsidies, home heating oil, all this stuff is going to be gone for the Ukrainian people. And so naturally, the right-leaning politicians over there, the Svoboda Party and Tymoshenko and her ilk, well, of course, they didn't want to be blamed for that, being in such a coalition, because that is precisely what they would have to do to the Ukrainian people. So they knew immediately that there was going to be another uprising in the Ukraine, because people aren't going to stand for this. In other words, the actual Ukrainian people are not represented by anybody. They're essentially fucked, is what they are. So these politicians who made these hardline demands, oh, we should be doing this and this and this, and we should align ourselves with the European Union and the IMF and NATO and all of this. Now, all of a sudden, they are getting very, very uncomfortable that they're going to be blamed if these subsidies and the ordinary situation for the Ukrainians, which is already bad enough, is going to get worse as a result of their decision making. So they don't want any part of it. So yeah, they left the coalition, and now, as predicted, Ukraine is in the same mess that it was in before. And so my guess is that the oligarchs will simply, rig the next election, and everything will continue on its downward path for the poor Ukrainian people. who actually wanted moderate and honest politicians, if there is such a thing, you know, to finally take the reins of that country. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So, yeah, that's the situation in Ukraine.